What's up, Wall fans, Common Sensors podcast consumers? Welcome to another video feed for a very exciting edition of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall, hosted by me, your absolute favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke. And we're under a time constraint today. When is that not the case? But a little extra today. So, all that being said, let's get right into episode 108.
One, two, three, go tell it to the wall. Tell it to the wall. Go tell it to the wall. Tell it to the wall.
All right, Wall fans, Common Sensors podcast consumers, welcome to another very exciting edition of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall, hosted by me, your absolute favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke, and this is episode 108. That's right. We have a very exciting edition for you today. It is Monday. We pushed back Common Sense Sundays for obvious reasons that we'll get into in a minute. But before we get into the meat of everything that is episode 108, we always kick things off with our social plugs. You can keep up with us before episodes, after episodes, during episodes, whenever you so please. And you can do that in multiple locations. One of those would be facebook.com/go-tell-it-to-the-wall. That's right, facebook.com/go-tell-it-to-the-wall. We also have our official YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/go-tell-it-to-the-wall. Again, youtube.com/go-tell-it-to-the-wall or at go-tell-it-to-the-wall, which they are now using on YouTube. And of course, there is my own personal Instagram account, which is at SoCalSean, SoCalSean, at SoCalSean. Lots of punk rock bowling pictures are getting posted over the next week or so. There's a couple up there already, but I'm still sorting through all those. So if that is something that interests you, make sure you follow my personal Instagram account at SoCalSean. And of course, we have the official website, one-stop shop for anything and everything that is Go Tell It to the Wall, Common Sense Sundays, Sean O'Rourke, all kinds of the stuff that's on there. And that would be SeanO'RourkeLive.com. Make sure you bookmark that one, check back often. You're going to find links to a lot of those things I just mentioned, links to various platforms where the episodes reside, because it's pretty much on every single podcast platform there is. And you're going to find exclusive content that only gets posted to the website. And of course, you're also going to find links to support us financially. One of those would be Patreon. If you're interested in getting involved in Patreon and become a patron of Go Tell It to the Wall, you can do that right there through SeanO'RourkeLive.com. There's a nice little support button. Takes you to Patreon. If you don't want to do that, but you do want to support us in other ways, you can pick up some Common Sense merch from our merch website that, again, links directly from SeanO'RourkeLive.com. Yes, it is Monday, and this is Common Sense Sundays, but for obvious reasons, because unless you live under a rock, or actually if you're in other countries, it might not mean anything to you. But in the United States, yesterday was Father's Day here. So, of course, I took the time to spend some extra time with my family, my daughter and my wife. My wife was actually gone for a good part of the weekend, didn't get back until yesterday afternoon. So, and I'm going to talk about part of how I spent my day, which was actually really fun and exciting family outing that we went on. But I do want to wish a happy belated Father's Day to all the fathers out there, especially my father, Jack, down there in San Diego. Not only was it Father's Day, and it has happened in previous years, his birthday was Saturday. So sometimes it happens every few years that it's on the same weekend. Sometimes it's actually the same day. So he was getting showered with all kinds of well wishes and happy Father's Days and happy birthdays over this weekend. But again, happy not only to my father, but to everyone out there who is a father. Happy Father's Day to you, and happy Father's Day to all of your fathers. I know it is a day later, but that's how it is here sometimes at Go Tell It to the Wall and Common Sense Sundays. All right, let's get into some digital trends. I've actually got some fun ones, and then we're going to get a little bit serious, as usually happens. But I wanted to kick things off with some of the fun trending things that are going on the social platforms right now. One of those things is, this one's been kind of flying around for a little while, and people will say, I believe the exact original tweet was, without Googling, name a famous historic battle. Now, historic battle being in finger quotes, because you'd think wars and all this. No. And it could be some of that stuff, but people have really gone crazy with it. Obviously, we have seen the woman and the cat meme, historic battles. One that finally got to me, and people are sharing funny stuff. So I encourage you to check this one out if you want to laugh. There's still parts of Twitter that are not an absolute hellscape, and this would be one of them to kind of look at and just get a laugh out of it. The ones that got me were the Mallrats ones, because finally somebody posted an image of Brody, right, from Mallrats. It's been a long time since I've watched Mallrats, and the escalator. So if you're familiar with Kevin Smith and the Mallrats, you know where that one's going. And of course, the images of Ethan Suplee's character in Mallrats and the 3D movie poster, the 3D poster. If you were alive in the 90s, you couldn't avoid this thing. We had it in Mallrats. It was in a Seinfeld episode. There was one in my house for a while. I remember it took me like weeks to finally see, and I can't remember what the hell it was, but it's those 3D image things that the image actually pops out. It looks like nothing. So encourage you to check that out if you're looking for a laugh. Another one that's kind of laughable and there's funny things, and this is kind of started organically as well. Somebody asked, what is with men's obsession with sports? Now, first of all, obviously, I know women that are bigger sports fans than myself, and I enjoy watching sports. I wouldn't say I'm a huge sports fan, but if you look behind me, there's sports memorabilia even on the wall, just above my rancid skeleton and action figures there. So yeah, obviously I'm a bit of a fan, but just to debunk that a little bit, there are plenty of women out there who are much bigger fans than your average male fan. So, but that, I'm not trying to nitpick at things. It's just kind of funny how that works. But what has happened is people are sharing like clips from games and stuff, and it's like, how can you not think this is amazing? And this is what I've always said, and that's why I want to bring it up. It's fun, but it's also, I want to talk about, not serious, but we talk about this often on the podcast. Let people enjoy what they enjoy. Some people like watching sports. Some people like reading comic books. Some people like watching reality shows, whatever it is. Everyone has their own thing. So it's not so much this obsession. It's just that many people out there in the world enjoy sports. And you could say, oh, what's with Americans and football and stuff? Well, look at the rest of the world and soccer, or as it's called everywhere except the U.S., football. Everyone has their thing. So there's nothing wrong with it. But if you want to see some interesting sports clips, that's one to look up as well. Personally, I didn't see enough of these, but that's what I really enjoy about sports outside of just the actual reality television side of it, because it's not, you don't know what's going to happen. With these reality shows, in finger quotes, you could say they're unscripted, but they're scripted to an extent, regardless. So outside of that, what I always enjoy is kind of the good-natured aspect of things, and kids getting excited over sports, and professional athletes being an influence on kids, and you always see clips of hockey players giving a puck to a kid, or giving baseball players giving a bat to a kid or a ball, whatever it might be, and that's just one aspect that I've always enjoyed about sports, and I was surprised to not see a lot of that. But you did see some exciting game clips, I guess you could say, but that's of course trending on the social platforms right now. Hashtag I don't want to forget. This one's trending right now for funny stuff and serious stuff. So use caution when you look at this stuff. But it got me thinking a little bit, because I tend to be such a cynical person. I am. My father used to call me cynical when I was a teenager, and he wasn't wrong. He was absolutely right. What I actually wanted to get, not super serious, but this kind of reminded me to think about, there's still decent people in the world. We talk about this often on the podcast as well, how there is a lot of hateful people out there. We're going to talk about them throughout this episode, as we usually tend to do. But we have to remember that that's a smaller percentage that just happens to be really loud and obnoxious. Speaking of loud and obnoxious, we're going to get into some of that stuff during this episode as well. But we have to remember that there's still decent people in the world. And that's tough to remember, especially in the landscape that is going on in this country and around the world right now. As far as politics and discrimination and everything else, and women's rights, it's scary. But we have to remember there's still a lot of people out there that are in favor of these things, not trying to set us back hundreds of years as some of the loud, obnoxious people are doing right now. Another thing that I've seen trending on the social platforms, really starting yesterday, because today is June 19th. So let me take a moment to say happy Juneteenth to everyone out there that celebrates. I am by no means an expert on Juneteenth. I know the very bare minimum. I am in full agreement that it should be a federal holiday, which it has become. And I think everyone has the right to celebrate things that they want to celebrate. And I am all in favor of that. Again, I'm not an expert. I don't even talk great about St. Paddy's Day, and that is part of my kind of heritage, I guess you could say. But the reason I bring it up here in digital trends is there's been so much discourse on the social platforms over Juneteenth. It's really wild. You see some of these conservative commentators and stuff they're putting out, and they say, oh, they're calling it a fake holiday. and saying it's just trying to undermine 4th of July and all this other stuff. It's like, we can have both things. You don't get to choose a date of a certain thing. And it's gotten really ridiculous because there's been so much complaining, not only from these conservative commentators, but also people just commenting on stuff on social platforms. In fact, I found myself swept up in a post by the Red Sox on Facebook yesterday, and they had colored their logo, which I guess is like the Juneteenth colors, but and they said Happy Juneteenth. This actually happened with the Dodgers. I noticed this one on Twitter, and people started complaining. And some of my favorite ones were, why can't we get politics out of here? And it's like, it's not politics, man. By no means is it politics. It's simply the celebration of something that is very important to a large population of people in this country. So that's debunked. And my favorite is I saw multiple, and this is where I started commenting, and I said, because people were saying, why are we doing this? Why are we honoring, let's just play baseball and stuff? And I pointed out to a couple people, I really hope that you were complaining about all the military appreciation stuff that happens among professional sports as well. And I have no problem with it. And not that I have a problem with it, it's just you can't complain about one and not the other. Your racism is showing if you are doing that. Because you can't fall back on that and then say, no, we need to celebrate this. It's not how it works. You can't have it both ways. And it goes along the other lines of let people enjoy things. Nobody is forcing you to celebrate Juneteenth. No, nobody. This is simply professional teams, organizations, companies recognizing the importance of the holiday that is Juneteenth. But people just have to be hateful and complain about things that don't affect them in any way. And that's so much how society works nowadays. It's astounding to me. And in fact, we had a video that started trending over the past couple days. More Nazis out in public, like blatant Nazis. So apparently there was a bakery in Concord, New Hampshire. And this video shows a group of Nazis, and there's literally no excuse. This is just like the Disney World stuff and the Nazi flags. You can't say I'm not a Nazi when you're waving Nazi flags. This group of guys is all giving the Nazi salute and yelling something and trying to intimidate this bakery and even knocking on the windows of the bakery. And I believe it had something to do with LGBTQ or specifically like drag shows, because that is such a hot topic right now, despite the fact that we don't see any evidence of drag queens molesting kids, but they're the groomers, and we just sit back and watch all these priests and politicians and everything else who are literally convicted of molesting and raping children. But yes, it is absolutely the LGBTQ community and drag queens that are the problem. Give me a fucking break. We cannot let this continue, okay? Many of us have grandfathers and great-grandfathers that would be and fathers that would be turning over in their grave. We did this. The entire country united and fought against the Nazis, united with other countries and fought against the Nazis. We've done this. You can't bring it back. It's the same as the Confederate flag, except it's worse. I mean, I think they're equally bad, but to a certain extent, you could say, you know what? Okay, fine. It was on that car and that TV. Okay, it's extremely offensive, but Nazi salutes and stuff like this and intimidating, harassing people, we can't let this stuff continue. And that's why the hashtag, I don't want to forget that there are people that are good people. But it's the loud ones, these Nazis, causing problems, harassing businesses, simply because they disagree with something that, yet again, Wall fans, does not affect them at all. They are just the loud minority who clearly have some issues themselves, and this is how they choose to spend their time. Another thing that's been trending specifically on Twitter, but I'm sure on the other social platforms as well, is Joe Rogan. Yeah, that winner of a human being had Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on his podcast. Yes, that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And then basically perpetuating misinformation. I'm going to talk more about this debate in finger quotes, as we get into common sense. But this is obviously, if you open Twitter right now, you're going to see a lot of discourse regarding Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Joe Rogan, and being amplified by the dude that owns Twitter, and that is Elon Musk. Again, we're going to talk more about that when we get to common sense. All right, moving on from digital trends to mental health. Here we go. I want to talk specifically about a former NBA player. His name is Tony Snell. He played for a few years in the NBA for various teams. He's now retired, I believe. He came out publicly just in the past week and talked about how he has been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. And the reason this came about is he has an 18-month-old son who wasn't hitting, if you've been a parent of a young child, you know this, hitting milestones. So kids should be talking at a certain point, and it's a window. It's not like one day. It's like, that's your milestone. They should talk that. It's a window, but within that window, if kids don't start talking and walking and certain things and socializing, then that raises some flags. And that's what happened with his son. So he took him in, and his son was also diagnosed with that same thing. So that inspired him to go and get checked out. And that's where he came back with the autism spectrum disorder diagnosis. And now he's being open with his diagnosis, which is, I think, fantastic. And we always talk about this on this podcast because that is a goal of Go Tell It to the Wall, is to end the stigma, to destigmatize mental illness and mental health problems, and make it known that anybody with mental illness is perfectly functional and able to do plenty of things. They just may need help when it comes to certain things, whether it's medication or talking to somebody, whatever it might be, cognitive behavioral therapy. It doesn't make anybody less of a person, and that has been a primary goal here. So whenever I see people of note talking about this, it brings joy to me, I guess. Not joy that they are now having to deal with this, although we know that dealing with something usually when you tend to get a mental illness diagnosis or a neurodivergent diagnosis like this, you look back and you say, oh. So it's not like you're suddenly now dealing with it. You just now are more equipped to deal with it. And he actually came out, and this was what I found interesting and what I want to talk a little bit about here in mental health, is he says early diagnosis might have kept him from the NBA. And that is because awareness has improved since then. So, and he's 31, so he's younger than me, and that goes to show how even over the past 20 years, we have made strides on that. And I see where he's coming from, because it was so stigmatized at that time when he was coming up and learning to play basketball, and it might not have been something he could continue to do because teams and such would know that diagnosis, and they might pick it apart and think that he's going to be less of a player because of it. It also got me thinking the ups and downs of awareness, because I think many of us of a certain age, if you lived through 70s, 80s, 90s, and then into the 2000s, you've seen the ups and downs of the awareness. A lot of us that were kids in the 80s look back and say, you know what, there was probably some things that could have been diagnosed better. And then what happened was in the 90s, we really ran with medicating kids, and it was part of stand-up comedy routines. I believe it was Chris Rock. He used to say, oh, now they have this ADHD. We just used to call it ants in your pants. You had ants in your pants. And it's like, okay. And I think to an extent we did over-medicate there. I am not a doctor, but in my opinion, and that over-medicating really stigmatized stuff for kids. And then we went back down on awareness. But now we have found that balance. We're not just throwing medication at people like was happening, 25, 30 years ago. Now it's a little more curated, and you can find the right doctor and everything else instead of just going to a pediatrician and they say, oh, here's your ADHD medication, and we're just drugging kids. And I'm not saying nobody should have been. I just, in my opinion, I think it was happening more than it should have at that time, which is again, the down, the up, the down, the up. And we are finally getting to a balance here in the world that we live in, where we're helping to eliminate that stigma, also helping people, but we've learned that it's not something to take lightly. It's not something to make fun of. We have made strides in that way. This is when I was first diagnosed as a late teen. I didn't want to talk about it with anybody. I kept it a secret. And then after years of struggling with it, I realized, I need to talk about my struggles, even if it helps just one person. So to look at that and look at Tony Snell and see where we've come compared to where we were, back in the 80s and 90s, it's interesting to kind of track that progress. And I think we are absolutely in a better place today. And I think we definitely have more awareness than we did in the 80s. I talk to so many people that are like, if we had diagnoses like we do now, I might have fallen into something like the autism spectrum disorder. I obviously had obsessive compulsive disorder when I was a child, but that wasn't diagnosed until I was in my late teens, early 20s. I was misdiagnosed before that. Medication thrown at me. And there's nothing wrong with medication. I take medication now. There's nothing wrong with that. But we can't just keep throwing extra medication at people. I had a doctor years ago, and I was like, I don't think this is working. And he'd go, which medication? And blah, 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 blah. Well, take more of that and more of that. And it's like, okay, I guess. I don't know that that was the best way to go. So it is finding that balance. And speaking of medications, last thing I want to talk about in mental health, and I believe I've mentioned this before, but summer is approaching. We finally got into the 80s, like on Saturday here in Southern California. We've been having the June gloom, which I enjoy. Everyone around here likes to complain. They're like, where's the sun? Where's the sun? I think I talked about this last week, and it's like, okay, we're going to hit August, and you're going to complain and say, why is it so hot? Why is it so hot? Just enjoy what we have right now. But as it gets hot, just a reminder, if you are one of those people that is on SSRIs, which includes stuff like Zoloft and other very typical medications that are given to people with mental illness, you are more susceptible to heat. So as the weather warms up, please make sure to drink extra water. Be conscious of the fact that you can become dehydrated quicker. I run hot to begin with, so I'm always aware of it either way, but this is something to absolutely be aware of as the hot summer months approach. I was going to say around the world, but no, it's different on the other side of the world. But for those of us that are getting into the hot weather of summer, keep that in mind and make sure you stay hydrated and cool. All right, positive news. We're going to revisit a story that we talked about, I believe, less than a year ago. And it is the sports bra and Jenny Nguyen, who is the owner of the sports bra. And again, I can't remember exactly what city it's in. It's in the Northwest United States, either Oregon or Washington. Apologies, I didn't write it down specifically. I think we talked about where it was about a year ago when we got into it. But the reason I want to talk about it is, and for those of you not familiar that don't remember, this is a sports bar that only shows women's sports. And this came about because Jenny Nguyen was actually trying to watch the finals of women's college basketball, went into a sports bar, and they had like one TV with it on, and they had no sound for it. They had sound for like another random regular season game, not a final game or anything like that, a championship game. And this inspired her to open the sports bra. And she was nervous for obvious reasons. She did not think it would be as successful as it ended up being. She was hoping to be open for a few months and then see how it would go. Well, turns out, in her first 8 months in business, the bar made almost $1 million. $1 million in the first 8 months. And it is thriving. It is doing well. They have a loyal customer base, and they obviously have people, I'm sure, that are coming from maybe not specifically to go there, but that are from out of town that will go in there and check out the bar. And I think this is much needed because women's sports, I don't know how it is around the rest of the world, but in the United States, it's just overlooked, and it's unfortunate. And I'm not saying we need to force people to watch women's sports, but there is a demand for it. And we can see that objectively with the sports bra and Jenny Nguyen and the good work that she has done with that. So good on you. I encourage you, if you're in the area of the sports bra, to check it out. You're probably going to have a positive experience, even if you're not super into sports, And that's actually going to walk us right into parenting. Let's talk about some parenting. And like I said, yesterday was Father's Day. I had a nice little Father's Day. My wife was at a bachelorette party starting Thursday. She got back yesterday afternoon. But a month or two ago, we found out that the Girl Scouts, so for those of you not familiar with the Girl Scouts, they do, this is silly. They do activities and stuff. They do activities, but a lot of times, like libraries, they will have a Girl Scout Day. And in fact, I believe we talked about it back in December when we had Girl Scout Day at the Nutcracker here in Southern California. Nutcracker Performance, got a patch and everything. Well, the LA Sparks, the Los Angeles Sparks, which is the WNBA team, Women's National Basketball Association team, decided to hold a Girl Scouts Day for their game that happened yesterday. Just happened to correspond with Father's Day. So we took the opportunity and got some tickets to do that. My daughter has been wanting to go to live games for a while. She has seen a couple of we've seen cousins play high school sports and stuff like that, but and youth sports, and she's obviously in youth sports. We hadn't been anything professional, and it probably would have happened sooner, but COVID hit. And then we actually had tickets to go to a Clippers game, which was through her rec center basketball league months ago when they were still in the regular season. She unfortunately got a little sick, so we didn't do that. So this was finally we got to go to this WNBA game. All of the kids had a blast. There was a bunch of Girl Scouts there. The kids were having so much fun. They were cheering. I think, especially for young girls, young women, to see females out there competing at a high level is just inspiring. It's inspiring to me, let alone somebody who is seeing someone that looks like them playing a professional sport. And I myself have turned into quite the Los Angeles Sparks fan. I've always been supportive of the WNBA. We occasionally will watch a game if it's on television, but you don't get a ton of games. It's not, baseball. You can find a game every day when it's baseball season. Basketball, there's, Friday night basketball, Saturday night basketball, Wednesday night. It's constant, and just high viewership. But it was so nice to actually experience this in person. In fact, we had the opportunity to go down to the tunnel and give high fives to the team as they ran onto the court. And then we had very nice seats. And the thing that really got me is it's more relaxed, but the same energy. And what I mean by more relaxed is if you've ever been to a professional sports game, for the most part, you know that you're going to stand in line for a bathroom. You're going to stand in line to get a drink. You're going to stand in line to get a bite to eat. You're going to stand in line to get a beer. And you got to time that out. Well, the great thing about the WNBA, and I truly wish they had higher viewership, but it's not packed within Crypto.com Arena, which is the former Staples Center here in Los Angeles. There's a good crowd. The energy is fantastic, but you can actually go and get food and not miss half the game, which is great. And in fact, I was grabbing food at one place and then got a beer at another place because they had the tasty beer at the other place. And that would have been an hour and a half at some games. And then it's also not, and this doesn't happen everywhere for every professional sport, but here in Los Angeles, it turns into like a fashion runway, especially for Lakers games. It's like, and I said this to my wife, it's like, it was so nice not seeing, and there's nothing wrong with it, like, do you? But it was so nice not seeing a bunch of dressed up women trying to walk the stairs in heels because they're just there for the clout and chance of getting on camera and everything else. No, everyone there was just there to enjoy the game, watch the sport, and support the team. I will definitely be back at another WNBA game in the future, and I would encourage you, if you have one near you, to also do the same. And in fact, we have women's professional soccer here, not far from where the WNBA plays, and planning to go hit one of those games as well and take the kiddo out for that. All right, moving along here. I always talk about these summer activities, and this one really got me. We got my daughter into an art camp. It's a 2-week art camp, like day camp. They don't stay overnight. In fact, today was her first official day at the camp, and we went to an open house there last week. And this is why I always encourage these things. We went through, and they have just a little bit of everything. You're learning drama, music, dance, like photography, green screen stuff, sculptures, painting, very traditional art formats as well as non-traditional, like with the green screen. In fact, my wife's walking around. She goes, "Can I go to this camp?" Like, she really wanted to go, and that's why I bring it up. All of the arts. And it's good to encourage kids to experience things. And you need to keep your kids busy during the summer. So I encourage all of you out there, all of you parents, to find things like these art camps. And in fact, this one, they have different sessions, but it's literally like kindergarten through senior year of high school that can go to this particular art camp. So I encourage you, if you have one in your area, to check that out. And the cost was very, very minimal for a 2-week, 10-day, because it's not on the weekends and it's not overnight, but a 2-week camp during the summer. Very, very affordable. So highly encourage you to check that out if you have it in your area. All right, I really didn't have a ton for parenting this week, but I did want to rant and complain for a minute. I spent most of my Saturday clearing weeds, and I barely put a dent in it. As you know, we in Southern California got a tremendous amount of rain over the winter months, and this is something I do every spring. You're clearing out weeds because it's overgrown and everything else, and but it's just on another level this year. There were weeds as tall as, I'm not even exaggerating, there were some weeds as tall as me, like off to the sides by some of the trees, and I live in Los Angeles. It's not like we have a ton of land or grass here. It's, I got a small patch of grass here and small planters, but the weeds are they're everywhere. And so I spent most of my Saturday doing that because I'm trying to get this pool up. But I got to clear out all these weeds before I get the summer pool up. And I am a little bit worried. No, actually, we're going to talk about that because that's in common sense. All right, so let's move along to some common sense here. That's why we're on a time constraint, is I actually got to go pick up my kid from art camp very soon after recording this episode. All right, common sense. I want to follow up on this. We're going to get into a little bit of sports here, but it is relating to common sense topics as well as stuff we've talked about in the past. John Morant, who we talked about from a common sense standpoint, and the fact that he's waving around guns and doing stupid things and possibly passing up millions of dollars that he gets paid to play a game because he wants to look tough and have a gun and everything else. And I talked about the second incident where he's dumb enough to go on Instagram Live waving a gun around. Well, we finally got an answer on that. The commissioner of the NBA came out just a few days ago and said that he's going to miss 25 games, which is essentially a third of the NBA season. It's one of the biggest suspensions ever given out for something that didn't involve fighting or I believe substance abuse is also, like, there might have been some suspensions longer for substance abuse. We all remember Malice in the Palace. That Ron Artest was suspended for like a year and a half, but that's because he was fighting with fans. And there's been a huge debate on the social platforms right now, and I think everyone is in agreement that John Morant did something wrong. It's just that we've also there needs to be a precedent set. And I do agree with people like Clinton Yates who have come out and said that they see that there should be some kind of punishment, but also there's two sides to this. More important thing is helping out John Morant. Why does he feel like he needs to wave a gun around? There's obviously something going on there, especially given his upbringing. He did not grow up in a rough area. We have athletes like Keyshawn Johnson who have come out and said that that did grow up in a rough area. As soon as they didn't have to be in that ridiculousness, they were out of it. As soon as they had enough money, they said, "No, I'm not doing this." So it's not even that he's used to it. It's just something that has happened. But the other side is we look at how guns are viewed in the United States. A lot of people will post photos of them shooting guns and everything else, and we don't even know if what he was doing was illegal because literally in some states you can carry a gun around without a permit and you just have it on you. You can have it in your car, all that kind of stuff. In California you're not able to do that, but many other states you are. So I think that is what needs to happen here. Is there needs to be clear guidelines, and it can't be a double standard. And most importantly, John Morant needs actual help instead of just taking away games and money from him. And trust me, he's losing out on a lot of money for different numbers on how much money he's losing. But a third of the season, you don't get paid when you're suspended. So it's a third of your yearly salary, essentially, that you're losing, plus whatever and other extra money, endorsement deals, bonuses, that kind of stuff. So we're going to see what happens with this. And I do agree he's done some dumb things, but we also have to make sure we're not just throwing arbitrary suspensions out there without any kind of basis, and then making sure that they're not just serving a suspension and going right back to it, because that's what happened. He was suspended 8 games for another gun incident during the season. And so now it's happened again, and clearly we see that he didn't learn from that. So it's instead of just saying, well, we're going to give you even a bigger suspension, maybe we should look at why this is happening. And I think that's an important thing to consider. Oh, boy. What's funny is, okay, I just scratched my arm. So I was weeding, like pulling weeds all day Saturday. And, of course, I got like bougainvillea and stuff. If you don't know what bougainvillea is, God bless you, because that means you haven't had to deal with it, and like roses and stuff. And I've got a couple scratches on my arm, and I totally just like scratched my arm, and now that tiny scratch from a thorn starts bleeding. So blood in the studio, Wall fans. Not really, just a little bit, but let's go ahead and wipe that up a bit. All right, one other sports thing I want to talk about is, and you may not be familiar with this, a big controversy has been happening for the past year or so. Saudi Arabia decided to come up with their own professional golf league. And the original professional golf league is the PGA, the Professional Golf Association. And there was a lot of back and forth. And the PGA said, no, you cannot go join LIV, which was, the Saudi Arabian league. Stay away from it. And guys left. And then the PGA, made a big stink about it and everything else. Well, a week or two ago, we come to find out that PGA is now going to merge with LIV. And yes, you might say, well, that's just how things happen. They merge, and there's like 5 companies that own everything in the entire world. Here's the thing: is the hypocrisy from the PGA, because we've gone to find out that literally one of the guys involved with Liv had, and I don't know details. I don't want to get into details. Had a connection to the 9/11 attacks. We're also talking about incredibly unfair laws that occur that are active there in Saudi Arabia, as well as disrespect for women, as well as other many controversial things that come out of that country. But because they have so much money, they were able to push the PGA to a point and then eventually merge with them. Goes to show that it's always about the money. And PGA backed down to that. They acquiesced. And after a year and a half or so of saying to other players, you cannot go and play with them, they merge with them. And that is just hypocrisy at its finest right there. And as usual, in the world and in the United States, money is the most important thing. PGA saw a way to make more money, merge with their competition, and that's where we are today, unfortunately. So I really will not be watching it. I don't watch much golf to begin with, but I don't really want to support that. One more thing on the sports front. I know we're sports heavy today. Not really. This one has to do with the Los Angeles Dodgers. They hosted their Pride Night this past Friday night. And of course, a bunch of people showed up to protest at the front gates of Dodger Stadium. In fact, there were videos, and I am chuckling at this one. They were protesting Pride Night. They were protesting the LA Dodgers, and they were protesting the Sisters of Perpetual, like whatever it is. It's this activist group that happens to dress up like nuns. And so, of course, Catholics and Christians, oh my God, how can you dress up like nuns and make fun of them? I don't think they are. They're simply making a point, and that's how they make their point. But of course, we had protests right out in front of Dodger Stadium. The interesting thing, that's the two interesting things. There was videos circulating, and they're like, look how empty the stadium is for Pride Night. And a couple people were like, that's like an hour before first pitch. Like nobody's even in the stadium yet. And then on top of that, apparently there was a couple of people out there interviewing protesters, and there was multiple protesters from out of state, didn't even live in California, let alone Los Angeles. And literally a couple of them were like, we're not sure if we're protesting the Dodgers or the Pride Night or the Sisters of Perpetual, whatever. Apologies for not knowing their exact name. No, I have no problem with them. I didn't write it down, to be honest. But that's been at the heart of the controversy there. And then, of course, people were pointing that out when Dodgers put out a Juneteenth statement. It's like, Jesus Christ, wait, you just want to protest things to protest. It's utterly ridiculous. Maybe spend some of that time helping, people that are hungry. There's plenty of better ways to use your time than protesting something that, again, doesn't even affect you. It's amazing to me. Let's do better. All right, orcas, so hot right now, orcas. If you haven't seen this, apparently orcas have been attacking boats. Now, I don't laugh because I want to see people get hurt. I don't want to see anyone get hurt that's on like a whale watching expedition or anything like that. But it's gotten to the point where now the orcas are attacking yachts, like mega yachts and stuff like that, and damaging them. Now, as far as attacking yachts, I'm all in favor of that. And here's the other thing, is everyone's freaking out and saying, oh, the orcas, or you got to stop the orcas and everything else. It's like, you know what, motherfucker? You're out in the ocean. You're in their territory now. So you can't complain. And especially if you're out there in some $1 billion mega yacht that you don't really need, but somehow, for some reason, have, just wipe your tears with your caviar and champagne and whatever else rich people do these days. But don't mess with nature. Again, I'm not saying I'm on the side of the orcas if people are getting hurt, but I'm on the side of the orcas if they're defending their own territory. It's their home. It's the ocean. Nobody owns the ocean. You don't. You can own an island in the ocean. You can own your little boat in the ocean, but ocean gonna ocean, and orca's gonna orca. So better deal with it and figure out how to, or maybe just don't have a mega yacht. You don't need that. For God's sake. All right, fireworks season is here. It's already loud every night. I'll tell you, the other night, there was a really loud one. My kid was asleep. Thank God she slept through it. And my wife comes out like a few minutes after. She's like, did you hear that giant firework? And I turned to her just laughing. And I was like, yeah, I'm not that deaf. And she was like, what? She was laughing too. But, because sometimes in our house, like you can be at the back of our house. And if the firework is from the back, like somewhere behind the house, you don't hear it as loudly out front. But this one was clearly like a street or two over, like a street over. It's like, no, I heard that thing. The house shook, car alarms are going off and everything else. And if you've been a long-time listener of Go Tell Us the Wall on Common Sense Sundays, you know Common Sense says fireworks are not fun. It's all fun and games until you blow a hand off or you start a forest fire. I am not a fan of the illegal fireworks that are constantly popping up around the Los Angeles area for the month of June and July. It has already started. We're getting it daily. And the other thing that's extra freaking me out is, again, for those of you not familiar, we get fires here in California. We have a fire season. That is going to be extra bad this year because of what I was talking about I was doing on Saturday, pulling all these weeds. So everything is overgrown. We've had these super blooms and everything else, and it's going to make it even more flammable as we approach fire season here. So it's extra terrible to be shooting off these giant fireworks right now because the fire danger is extra high. So please, knock it off with the fireworks. Watch it on TV. I'm so over fireworks in general. Like, honestly, has anybody out there seen a drone show? Synchronized drones doing crazy stuff in the sky is 1,000 times better than any of these fireworks that are being shot off. Now, by all means, go to a professional fireworks show where there's safety, there's fire department, all kinds of other stuff. But stop with the illegal fireworks. Stop shooting them off in the middle of the night. Middle of the day, too. We may hear one over this episode or the next few episodes. Middle of the day. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? It's completely light outside. But people insist on lighting these crazy-ass fireworks illegally every June and July. It's funny, too. I saw there was a tweet from, can't remember who it was, but somebody that is a musician from the UK that's heavy in the ska scene, is actually, I believe, touring the U.S. right now. And apologies, can't remember who it is. Not important. But they were like, why are there fireworks stands everywhere? Is there this high of a demand for fireworks? And it's like, unfortunately, yes. Especially June and July. And in a lot of states, they're completely legal. I mean, when we're road tripping across the country, it's just like these massive fireworks. And here in California, because we have such fire danger, and people are dumb, it's technically not legal. All right, I want to circle back to Joe Rogan and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So what happened was there was a prominent doctor who actually helped create the COVID vaccine and had come out and said that misinformation, shockingly, I know, shocking, was being presented on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast because he had none other than Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on there spouting conspiracies and anti-vax views, all kinds of other craziness. And so this doctor pointed out, why are we letting this misinformation happen? Well, Joe Rogan came back at him and said, why don't you come on my show and debate Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? And he said, I will give $100,000 to the charity of your choice for you to come on and debate. And of course, he pushed back and said, I'd be happy to talk to you about it, but I'm not coming on and debating anything. Well, and then this literally turned into Elon Musk jumping in and saying, I guess he hates charity. Well, Joe, Robert, and Elon, let me explain this to you. And it should be so fucking obvious in the landscape we live in these days. You can't debate stupidity. You can't. Have you ever been on a social platform and seen people arguing in the comments? All they're doing is gaslighting this prominent doctor who has done nothing but help save lives. And gaslighting alongside of someone who believes that vaccines cause autism. Who believes that Wi-Fi, not only does he believe it causes cancer, but he went on some rant about how it disables the blood in your brain and it allows all of the toxins to seep into your brain. You cannot medically debate somebody like that. And all it takes is 5 minutes on a social platform. I was looking at comments on the Red Sox Juneteenth thing. Logic and common sense don't matter to people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or Joe Rogan or Elon Musk. It just simply doesn't. All RFK is just going to rant and yell, and say, and then be, I won. What? Nothing you've said has been based on a fact, but you've just been yelling and ranting. Now, yes, I realize I yell and rant at a wall, but I'm not trying to debate prominent doctors because I'm not a fucking doctor. We're really taking medical advice from Joe Rogan and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. over prominent doctors. And people are in support of this. People say, wow, go on and debate him. Why won't you debate him? If you're so right, debate him. That's why. It won't be a debate. And I blame the Orange Menace for this. You can't have debates anymore. You know, you have presidential debates years and years ago. There was some mudslinging and stuff, but then here comes the orange one. He's talking over people. just being unnecessarily boisterous and obnoxious. And then that has led other people to do the same thing. And Spotify gives Joe Rogan millions of dollars to constantly perpetuate misinformation and bring people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on his podcast. Wi-Fi and cancer. And literally, I watched one clip and he's like, you wouldn't believe me, but there are tens of thousands of studies that show that how have we not seen a single one of these studies, Robert? Is it maybe because they're on conspiracy websites? Just a guess, or you just made it up? He's sitting in his home office just writing study after study after study. Wi-Fi causes cancer. Why? Because I say so. Oh, okay, buddy. This man is super anti-vax. He deserves none of your time. He's not actually a Democrat. He should not be running for president, and Cheryl Hines should be ashamed of herself for continuing to support him and perpetuate his blatant lies. Blatant lies. All right, let's get into some entertainment news, and we're going to wrap up episode 108 here soon. I'm going to kind of speed run through this because I got an album review and I got a punk rock bowling recap to get to. But I do want to mention Muppets Mayhem. I mentioned when this was coming out before. I finally started watching it. I've gotten through like 3 episodes. And if you are a Muppets fan and are not watching Muppets Mayhem, you are missing out. I think anybody should watch it, but especially if you're a Muppets fan. It's completely awesome for the Muppets fan. And Animal and other Muppets on there are just absolutely raucously funny. They've done a great job with it, and I hope it catches on and gets good enough ratings so that we can continue to get more of this Muppets Mayhem. Yes, I'm a little bit biased. For those of you watching on the video, that is an animal right there, and my computer screen actually is covering up somewhat of a shrine to the Muppets over on that side, and nothing wrong with that. So make sure you check out Muppets Mayhem. All right, Sesame Street Vans, one step closer. Vans, they always do these collaborations. They have done it with Sesame Street now, and I've often said the day they do a Muppets collaboration, and my wife is aware of this, is the day that I drop $1,000 in one sitting on Vans, as I collect every single one of the Muppets ones. Must have for the collection. I'm just going to pick up one of these pairs, but they've got some customs. They've got skate highs, old schools, authentics, slip-ons, all kinds of stuff. So if you're a Vans fan, Vans collector, make sure you're checking those out. I love Sesame Street, so I will be picking that up. On some positive news, this really positive news for me, or if you live in the area, we have a new venue that's super close to me. It's Permanent Records Roadhouse. I had heard of Permanent Records. There was a record store that was not far from me. They closed and they moved. I was aware of that. They moved a little bit further away, 2-3 miles away. But I wasn't aware that they actually put in a music venue. They have an inside stage and an outside stage. They actually had an awesome show on Saturday night. I was unable to attend. I didn't even know about it till Saturday. I had some friends that went there, and I was like, where is this? Oh my gosh, it's not far from my house. So I'm excited to see if we'll get more shows at that venue, and especially with it not being a Live Nation venue. You're not paying an arm and a leg for tickets and drinks. Blink-182 had their Friday and Saturday shows here in Los Angeles. And of course, if you've looked up any kind of news on it, all you see is the Kardashian stunt that happened on Saturday. Apparently, whichever one of the Kardashians that Travis is married to held up a sign at the show, their BMO Stadium on Saturday, that said, "Travis, I'm pregnant." And everyone freaked out and said, "Oh my gosh, she's announcing her pregnancy at the show," and blah, 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 blah. Clearly, he knew about it beforehand, and this is what I had been worried about when Travis Barker got involved with the Kardashians, is we were turning Blink-182 shows into Keeping Up with the Kardashian episodes, and I'm not here for it. And yes, you could sit there and say, oh, it's a reference to the music video and the album cover. Yeah, I get it. But now that's all anyone's talking about. They're not talking about the actual show. They're talking about fucking Kardashian show. Give me a break with it. It's probably going to be on the stupid reality show and everything else. And don't tell me that he didn't know beforehand. You don't fucking do that. You don't announce to the world at the same time as your husband that you're pregnant. That's just not how things work. So it's obviously a stunt. All right, let's talk a little album review here. I am not only wearing the shirt, Little Miss Almost Famous, Amy Gabba and the Almost Famous. My wife is extremely jealous of this shirt. She loves the Little Miss stuff and said, nope, this was given to me by Amy while I was there in Vegas. She also hooked it up with her newest album on CD. This just came out 2 weeks ago, I think. I mentioned it on the last episode. It is Screaming at the Top of My Lungs, again, by Amy Gabba and the Almost Famous. I love the design on it, too. It's got her picture on the back. And they did a side A, side B, which obviously I'm sure they used for the vinyl, but they also put it on the CD, which I really appreciate. She hooked it up with this CD, but I went and so in order to support Amy Gaba, who's a fantastic person, like I mentioned last week, I went ahead and paid for the digital download on that as well, so I could support, especially since she gave me this awesome shirt that I get to wear on the podcast. Like I said, screaming at the top of my lungs. What I said to my wife, and my wife has been, I've been listening to this album, I don't want to say nonstop, but quite a bit over the past few weeks since I got the CD. And I said to my wife, who is a big fan of her, I said, well, she's becoming a big fan of Amy, but she's also a big fan of Ani DeFranco. And I said, you know what? She is like a punk version of Ani DeFranco. And I mean that in the best way. She has a certain vibe, but it's definitely a punk ska feel as opposed to like the folk singer-songwriter. It's like a Venn diagram of those things. So that was one of the first things that popped to my mind. And it has multiple cameos on there, including Tara Hahn of Half Past Two, Aaron Barrett, the lead singer for Real Big Fish, and Scott Klopfenstein of the Littlest Man Band, Scott Klopfenstein solo stuff, and formerly of Real Big Fish. All those tracks are fantastic. I would say it's great from start to finish. This is one of those albums, and the structure of it lends to listening from first song to last song, which I really appreciate. We've gotten back to that over the past couple years. It's not just throwing hits on an album and there's no real progression. There, like I said with the Barstool Preachers' newest album, there's beautiful progression to it. You want to listen from first track to last track, and this is definitely an example of that. And I will say He's All Yours, which is the track featuring Tara, and I'm a little biased because Tara is a good friend of mine. It just slaps so hard. It is so good. And I love how Amy brought in the right cameos on certain songs that fit the style of that song, which we clearly see here with all three of the songs that have cameos on them, especially with He's All Yours, which is the song, like I said, that has Tara on it. Probably my favorite song on there. The harmonies on all the songs are so clean. You can tell Amy put a lot of time into putting together a fantastic album that sounds good, has that great progression, like I said, and it's just her singing. Well, with the exception of the cameo tracks, it's just her singing. So she's got her own harmonies in there, and they really, really connect kind of that deep listening when it comes to a lot of tracks on the album. And I will say my other favorites are One of My Mistakes, Heavy, and Hey Little Rich Girl, which is actually the track that features Scott Klopfenstein. So again, if you haven't picked this one up, it's available on vinyl, CD. You can get some T-shirts. I believe Amy has which brings me to another thing that I didn't even note on here. I believe Amy has a Bandcamp, and since today is Juneteenth, if you're not on Bandcamp and didn't get the email, they're actually donating all of their proceeds to NAACP Defense Fund, one of the specifically African-American defense funds, today on Juneteenth. So if you want to pick that up, you can pick it up through Bandcamp, also through Amy's website. Keep in mind, if you're in the U.S., you might pay a little extra on shipping because Amy is based out of Toronto, Canada. But highly, highly recommend that. At the very least, you can pick up the digital version and start listening to it today. I will probably be listening to it again later today as I'm doing other stuff around the house, probably weeding the yard more. It's like would be out there after sunset with like a headlamp on and stuff trying to clean up my yard. All right. One more thing, and then we're going to get into a Punk Rock Bowling Day 2 quick recap, and then we're going to close out episode 108. And that is Barstool No. Bassists Against Racists. That's right. Their June design has dropped, and it is Estella Adieri. Apologies if that pronunciation is not correct. I am not super familiar with Estella, and she is with Big Joni, a band called Big Joni. And of course, as always, this is from the beautiful brain of Lynn Lee. All of the art is done by the uber talented Paul Smith of Zombie Teeth Clothing, and done in support with Chaos Merch as well as Team Mom Merch, who are taking the pre-orders and printing and getting all those out to everyone that wants to pick up a Bassist Against Racist shirt. So if you're in Europe, you're picking that up through Team Mom Merch. Get your pre-orders in. If you're in the North America, you're picking that up through Chaos Merch. That's Chaos with a K, K-A-O-S, and get your pre-orders in. You got a couple weeks left here. That's the 19th today. You have till the end of June. What is it, 30? You got like 11 days. So make sure you get that pre-order in. And I will say, as we move into Punk Rock Bowling recap, so many Bassists Against Racist shirts at Punk Rock Bowling. In fact, there was one day where I was wearing one of mine, my Intruder Purple shirt, one of the days, and two of my friends were also wearing Bassists Against Racist shirts. So we got some pictures, and you can actually see those on my Instagram at SoCalSean. And one thing I didn't mention last week with day one that I kind of knew was going to happen, but it was, I mentioned so many punks running around downtown Las Vegas for the weekend. And sure enough, we're standing in line to check in. I hear someone like a couple people behind me, and it's like a family with kids, and they're checking into the downtown Grand. And I just hear one of them go, "Oh, that's why the rooms were so expensive this weekend." So I was just waiting for someone that was like, had no idea this giant festival's happening and just happens to be there in a sea of punks, just randomly not realizing that there's going to be a hotel almost full of punks going to punk rock bowling. With that being said, I want to talk a little bit about day two. Talked about day one last episode. Day two was definitely one of the more tiring days, and that's because we got up in the morning, went to the pool party, which happens right at our hotel, thankfully. So I rolled out of bed and go to this pool party, and the great thing there was Mabel syndrome, which I've mentioned a couple times. We have at least one sticker on the wall here. I got to update. They gave me some new stickers. They actually had a cabana. So I had the opportunity to meet a few Mabel syndrome ladies that I have interacted with online and got to actually finally meet them in person, which was fantastic. Had a blast at the pool party. Booze and Glory and a couple other bands played. And I decided to go like full Vegas, so it's like 11 a.m. I go up to the bar and I get a giant pina colada, like in one of those like tumbler cups, you know. So I'm walking around at 11 in the morning because it's Vegas, and I'm drinking a pina colada, enjoying some music, and meeting a bunch of people at the downtown Grand Pool that I had been waiting a couple years to meet, to be honest, because there's many people I've known for a couple years on socials, but they live in other states, other countries even, and it was nice being able to actually see them in person. So we finish up the pool party, grab a bite to eat, and then, of course, it's off to the festival. On this particular day, we actually had to get there very early because the Venomous Pinks, who I often talk about on the podcast, were playing early in the day. They were on at like 2:40 or something. So we rush over there, heat of the day, standing in the sun for the Venomous Pinks set at Punk Rock Bowling. Well worth it. They put on a great set, as they always do. But then, of course, I was like, okay, I need a break. We're struggling to find some shade. I am chugging water at that time. In fact, it was so warm and so tiring that we just didn't even have many drinks, like beer or any kind of drinks. I think I ended up having like 2 beers for the entire like 10 hours that were there. But all the bands that day killed it. You may have seen a lot of complaints. They had some problems with the beer lines. Some people had to end up standing in line for like an hour just to get a beer. They had the credit card machines go down. Everything. These things happen. I get the complaints. I will say it was hot and they should have had more water available, but that's here nor there. And then, of course, like I said, all of the bands put on a great performance. I was running around seeing a lot of vendors that I know personally, picking up a couple cool souvenirs. My sis Laura got me the Punk Rock Bowling pin by Jared Gaines. I was blanking on his name. Fantastic artist out there. So we continued that day and, of course, rounded out the day with The Damned and Bad Religion. And I will say, at my age and that long of a day and standing on pavement, I found myself stretching my back, like literally doing toe touches during Bad Religion, still having a blast, but my back just started to tighten up and I was about done at that point. And then, of course, the day isn't done. So we leave there, and unfortunately, I ended up missing the club show that we had tickets for in order to go to Hogs and Heifer Saloon, the Punk Rock Saves Lives club shows, and see the guys in Let Me Downs, which was obviously a big priority. So we hung out there for a little while and then called it a night. Let Me Downs put on a great show, as they always do. Speaking of which, they're actually working on a new album. I believe they'll be heading to Southern California soon, over the next 2 weeks, to get started on their newest album. So closed out the night with Let Me Downs, and then basically rolled myself into bed because I am getting old, and like 14, 15 hours straight of stuff is tiring, even for a young man. But I am hitting that age where just can't quite do it anymore. But that was day two. It was an absolute blast, despite just a very, very sore back. And thank God Hogs and Heifers is right across from the hotel, so I didn't have to go far to actually get back to the hotel. But it was great seeing everyone that day. Ran into so many people, so many Bases Against Racist shirts, and just being around like-minded people for an entire day was just something that you can't describe unless you've experienced it. And not even saying you have to experience it at Punk Rock Bowling, but Burning Man or anything like that, where it's just being around your scene, your like-minded people, and enjoying that, and enjoying meeting friends, and obviously having great music at the same time. And I guess the sound, and Interrupters played that day too. Jeez. That's why I was sore too. You can't see the interrupters and not jump around and dance around and all that kind of stuff. And then people were saying the sound was off for Bad Religion. I didn't notice that much, but I will say Amy, Interrupter, came out and sang Sorrow with Greg Graffin and the Bad Religion band, which was a nice little treat there. So, all right. And that was day 2 of Punk Rock Bowling. We're going to do day 3 and 4 over the next couple episodes. And like I said, there's a lot of pictures that are going to be coming. So make sure you're following my Instagram account, which is at SoCalSean, SoCalSean. On that note, don't forget to follow our other social platforms, Facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall, also YouTube.com/GoTellItToTheWall, or at GoTellItToTheWall on YouTube. And of course, your one-stop shop for anything and everything would be SeanO'RourkeLive.com. And while you're on there, please take a moment to check out our Patreon campaign, as well as our merch website, both of which link directly from SeanO'RourkeLive.com. All right, we should be back next week, same wall place, same wall time, but probably on Sunday. We just pushed it today because of Father's Day, and I chose to spend that time with my family instead of sitting in a studio and yelling at a wall. So look for updates on that for next Sunday, but we should be back, not seeing any scheduling conflicts at this time. Yeah, this has been episode 108 of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell the Wall, hosted by me, your absolute favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke. And remember, wall fans, common sensors, podcast consumers, no matter what you do, no matter who you're with, no matter where you're going, especially no matter why you are doing it, always use common sense.